Hello there and welcome back to another video. In today's video, I've got this Optiplex 3080 that I picked up off of eBay, and I'm going to be repairing and refurbishing it today. After shipping and tax, I ended up paying right around $90 for this computer. This should have an Intel Core i3-10100 in it, paired with 8GB of DDR4 RAM and no storage. And hey, if all else fails with this system but the CPU and RAM are good, with today's RAM prices, I should be able to recoup almost the whole cost of the computer by just selling those two components. But that would be lame. So let's see if we can actually get this computer working again instead, because those parts are much more useful and desirable in a functional system. According to the seller, this computer should power on but repeatedly reboot with no display output. However, if you've seen any of my previous videos on eBay PCs such as this, you'll know that these seller descriptions of issues are almost never accurate, so let's try and recreate the problem. After plugging the system in and trying to power it on, I was greeted with an error code from the power button LED, but the computer still posted while throwing this error, which seemed a little weird at first. Based on the warnings from the post, it seemed like the computer had just gone through a CMOS reset cycle, which aligns with how long it took to power up. Nevertheless, I was able to get into the BIOS and see all of the system information just fine, so I'm honestly not too sure what's causing the error on the power LED, while also not being significant enough to cause the PC to fail to post. So I chose to start with two very simple troubleshooting steps, those being to reseat the RAM and check/change the CMOS battery. I didn't expect anything to come of reseating the RAM, considering that usually when a RAM reseat is required, the system will not post or display at all. The CMOS battery could be a top suspect though, as these Dell systems do power cycle about 3 to 4 times when resetting their CMOS, and this could be part of what the seller was trying to describe. Plus, these systems will CMOS reset every single time they're unplugged if their battery is dead. So it could be a repeatable issue, which is what it sounds like from the seller's description. Interestingly, there was an Amazon Basics brand CMOS battery installed in this motherboard when I opened the system up, meaning that someone probably replaced this before, as I've never seen an Amazon Basics battery used by an OEM like Dell when manufacturing their computers. Because of the fact that this CMOS battery has clearly been replaced before and the system really isn't that old, being 10th generation Intel and all, I wasn't expecting this battery to test bad when I hit it with my CMOS battery tester. But to my surprise, it read 0 volts, and so it needed to be replaced. No big deal, I grabbed one of my Panasonic replacement CMOS batteries and threw it in after ensuring that it tested good, of course. I then closed up the system and was ready to have a perfectly functional machine for a pretty darn good price. Except that didn't happen. This time, I got an error code again through the power LED, but I also got a completely black screen. I had officially made the problem worse because now the system won't post at all. After looking up the error code I was getting for this model, I found out that the motherboard was throwing a dead CMOS battery error. What? I just replaced that. Well, I know I replaced the old battery with a good new battery because I tested it before I put it in for the sake of due diligence, but maybe something's gone wrong and the motherboard just doesn't agree with this specific cell. So I grabbed a brand new cell from a different brand, LICB in this case instead of Panasonic, tested it before installing it, installed it, and got the exact same behavior and error. Thoroughly confused at this point, I took a look around the motherboard for a clear CMOS header, wondering if maybe the battery switching had confused the CMOS circuitry and using the jumper procedure to clear the CMOS again would reset everything to a functional state. However, I wasn't able to find this header on this motherboard, and even if I could, removing and replacing the battery a bunch should have reset the CMOS on its own. So I turned to some other tests, including putting a low-profile GPU into the system and seeing if I could get it to post through that, regardless of the fact that it was still throwing an error code, because we've already seen it post and throw a code at the same time, so I figured I could try to recreate that behavior again. Relatively unsurprisingly though, this made absolutely no difference. So back to the drawing board, I guess, and honestly, this behavior had me really confused. But I was quite confident that it was at least something to do with the BIOS or the CMOS. Since there didn't seem to be a header to use to go through a full, standard CMOS clear sequence on the motherboard, I chose to try one more way to reset the CMOS, and that is leaving the battery out for 5 to 10 minutes. Most motherboards, to reset the CMOS, do recommend leaving the battery out for about 5 minutes if you're not using the header to clear the CMOS. But in my experience across many models of motherboards, this has literally never mattered, and 30 seconds has always been plenty. And while changing the CMOS batteries in the system, the batteries were removed from the system completely for easily 30 seconds, multiple times. But whatever's going on here, the computer isn't working, so I chose to take my chances and leave the CMOS battery out for 5 minutes. Because what am I gonna do? Lose 5 minutes? In any case, after that time was up, I came back, installed the new battery, and apparently that's what it needed. Because after a bunch more testing, I could confirm that the system was completely healthy now. This is a behavior from a computer that I'm yet to see, and it's definitely going to be on my radar now for any future systems that exhibit this kind of weirdness. As I mentioned before, out of basically every single computer I've worked on, ranging from old office PCs to current gen platforms from Intel and AMD, all the way to laptops with their 2 batteries, not a single one has taken issue with a CMOS battery being removed for only 30 seconds to perform a CMOS reset until now, especially when the old battery was completely dead. But I'm not complaining. I've got a new bit of troubleshooting knowledge under my belt for any future computers I work on, and this repair cost me a whopping 1 CMOS battery and about 30 minutes of troubleshooting. I'd say that I've done pretty darn good with that, and I should be able to flip this computer for a nice little profit. Well, that's all that I have for you in this video. A pretty short one, but hopefully at least a little interesting and maybe even helpful. I hope that you were able to at least enjoy it and maybe even learn a thing or two. And in any case, I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.